Brian has booked us a special guest right here in this time slot, one of our favorite football writers from CBS Sports. It's Pete Prisco here on your home of the Cowboys. And a good afternoon, sir.
Broadus is on every day now?
Every day, man. How about that?
Wow. Oh, my God.
It's been 4 years, man. I've been on for 4 years.
But I have a hard time believing that just the city of Dallas and the whole area there in Fort Worth can tolerate you for every day. I mean, I'm kidding, by the way. I love Brian Broadus.
No, you don't. You're being totally serious, Pete. Don't let anybody fool you like that, right?
Pete, he's killing it, man. He not only knows the Cowboys and the NFL, but his network of people. You know how Brian is. He's breaking stories for us with the Stars and the Mavs. He's an absolute sports radio star here. What was your first impression when y'all met back in Jacksonville all those years ago?
Brian was always a good dude, always. And you know, he got the short end of the stick in Jacksonville for something that shouldn't have happened. And so I've always had nothing but respect for Brian. You know, look, he's been around the league a long time. He knows a lot of people, like you say. And, you know, I've been around the league a long time, and us old-timers kind of stick together.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Pete. Thank you for your kind words. Hey, you know, when you look at this, you know, we can focus on the Cowboys, but when you look at the NFC East, did the NFC East as a whole get better with what we've seen with free agency and the draft and maybe some coaching changes? Is it going to be – is Philadelphia and Dallas going to have a little bit more of a struggle with the Commanders or even with the Giants?
More so for me, the Commanders. And look, you know, you went to LSU, I went to ASU. I think Jaden Daniels is the most improved player I've ever seen in my life in terms of the process and where he was at Arizona State and where he went and became at LSU. And so I think he's going to be a big-time quarterback. In fact, I've said I think he might end up being the best in this class. That's how much I think of him. And when you look at their team, yeah, there's some concerns on the offensive line. I get it. But there were last year, too. They're going to be better than they were last year. But there's talent on that roster. He brought a lot of guys in, veteran guys in, guys that the staff knew, guys that, you know, Dan Quinn knew. And I think from that standpoint, it's going to help a lot of the younger players. They're going to be a better football team. I still think it's the Eagles and the Cowboys at the top, but I'd watch out for the Commanders as one of those teams on the rise.
Peter, you feel like, though, when you look at the Cowboys, is this a big-time gamble with what they're playing with right now with Dak Prescott and this contract?
Yeah, it's definitely a gamble, and I don't understand it. I know because the price goes up every single time another deal gets done, and there's a couple on the horizon. Trevor Lawrence is going to get his deal done, and Tua is going to get his deal done. So, you know, the longer they wait, the more the price will go up if that's what they want to do. Now, are they telling you and telling me and telling everybody else that that's not what they want to do, that they don't want to keep Dak Prescott? If that's the case, then I think they have a real problem on their hands because where are you filling that position? I mean, you know, you saw the draft this year. We saw guys get overdrafted because everybody's so desperate to find that guy. So if you don't have Dak Prescott, what do you do? What do you have? And I get the criticism. He hasn't won the big games, and that's, you know, on your resume. That hangs over your head, but I think ultimately they'll be smarter about it and they'll get it done, and he'll be a Cowboys quarterback.
Are these teams reaching too hard to find these players, considering there's, you know, second rounders and Mr. Irrelevance and Jared Goff and NFC title games and stuff?
No, if you don't have that guy, you have major problems. And you know, we can look over the course of history and say, okay, you saw Brock Purdy, you know, Mr. Irrelevant, and the 49ers rosters around him, and Shanahan's one of the great coaches in this league, and they make it easy on him. But ultimately, you know, when it comes time for him to make plays, is he going to be able to when everything isn't perfect around him? And that's the question. Because when you do pay the quarterback, it depletes your roster. And so you have to have that chance to go win with him now when he's a cheap quarterback, because when you get expensive, it's going to be a problem. So, you know, is he a win with or a win because of? And that's what you have to ask yourself the question about Dak Prescott. Is he a win with or win because of? And I think somewhere in between is the answer, and I think that's why they're having problems trying to get him to a long-term extension.
Pete, where do you have, like, CeeDee Lamb in the hierarchy of your wide receivers?
Oh, he's right there with the group at the top, you know, and I think he proved that last year. You know, it's if you have that one guy, and certain teams do, and the Cowboys do, you know, it's Jamar Chase and Jefferson and Tyreek Hill, and CeeDee Lamb is in that grouping. I think he's one of those guys, when you look what he did last year, he took the next step. He's in the top, wide receivers in this league, and he's definitely a one. Now the question becomes, what are they going to do around him? What do they have around him? Is there enough around him, for them to be a good, consistent offense? And that's still, I think, a question as you go into the season.
We're looking at this, with they added Guyton, and I don't know where you had Guyton on your board at the tackle spot. You might have had others better. And then Beebe, the center guard, from Kansas State. Is that enough to help this offensive line going forward?
Is Steele going to be better than he was a year ago? Because he wasn't very good.
That's the thing that we're trying to kind of figure out, because that knee injury, everybody that had a knee injury for the Cowboys seemed to get, it was week 8, week 9 before they actually looked like a player that we'd seen before.
Yeah, and if Steele's back to playing like he did before the injury, then they'll be fine on the offensive line. I think moving Beebe to center is interesting, but I think it's the right decision. I think he's going to be a good center. I think it's the smart move for him. Guyton has the tools, and you're making a switch from right to left, but we've seen that done before. It's happened. Smith played right tackle at times when he was with the Cowboys at left tackle. Remember, He was a right tackle. So you can make the move. Somebody had told me that in the scouting process that they thought Guyton, once he got with an NFL team, would be a better player than he was in college. And because he's one of those guys, I think, that needs a little extra push as coaching in terms of techniques and stuff. But I think he's going to be fine. I think that left side of the line is going to be really good for a long time. I mean, the Tyler side is going to be outstanding for them. Mm-hmm. And if Beebe can end up being the center, then I think you go across the board. Steele takes a step forward. The offensive line's good. They're going to be much better up front. So I like what they've done. And they have some guys that, those backups, they like some of those backups. So I think they'll be much better on the offensive line.
Pete, I know there's been times where you've talked about running backs in your mind and when to pay them, when not to pay them. We saw those running backs last year, the guys that were in free agency in the spring, get paid a decent amount of money. Did the Cowboys miss an opportunity here to grab a running back, say, in the 3rd round?
I would have drafted one. I know that much. I would have drafted one. I'd always draft one in the 3rd or 4th round and see what I have. And maybe if you find one in the 3rd round, you come back another year later and get one in the 6th or 7th, because we've seen those guys come onto the scene and be guys who can play. And I think that's the way you have to handle the running back position. I don't think they did a great job of handling the running back position. Is Zeke Elliott the answer? I don't see that being the answer. And so I think they have problems at that position. I would have drafted a young guy, and I would have addressed the running back, because that's what you do. You draft them, you develop them, you run them, and then you get another one 4 years later. You don't ever pay the second contract. I would never do that. Unless you're the special airback, and McCaffrey being one of those guys. Other than that, you don't pay them anymore, because the value of the position just isn't there.
Where are you on the thoughts about Jake Ferguson, the tight end? When we look at, it looks like to me that throughout his career here so far, it seems the arrow pointing up with the ability to make the plays he has, run after catch on it. Where would you, as you watch him play, how's your evaluation of him?
I like him. I think you're right. The arrow is pointing up, and we've seen guys in that offense be a big part of what they need to do in terms of the tight end position, and guys have come on. I mean, you've seen guys become good quality pass catching tight ends, and I think he can. I don't think that's a position you have to worry about in terms of the pass catching part of it. I think when you look at them, they have to is Cooks still able to be the 2? What do they get from the rest of that group? I think that's the concern, is what you get from the other wide receivers.
Yeah, see, Tolbert's the one that we're kind of all waiting on. I mean, there was a little bit of a promise, last year, but really not enough to make you think. They move on from Gallup. I think there's some questions about really the 2-3 here.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I like Tolbert coming out. I thought
I did too.
And it hasn't translated yet. It just hasn't worked out for him, and I think that's one of those situations where this is a do-it year. He has to show people he can do it. So sometimes when guys get faced with that kind of adversity, it's time to go, and they either do or they don't. If they don't, he won't be around.
Pete, I know that I hope I'm not putting you on the spot here, and I know you love the draft. I mean, that's one of the things I've always really loved about you is how much you care about the draft. If you had to say who was the best player that the Cowboys drafted?
Best overall player?
Yeah.
I mean, the kid they drafted in the first round, I mean, I like him, but what is he?
Yeah.
I mean, that's my question with him, Brian. I don't know what he is. He plays hard, he's big, he's tough, but is he where do they play him? What does he do? How do they use? I mean, the second round guy, the pass rusher from
Nealon. Nealon. Yeah.
Where do you play him?
Yeah.
So I think that's a concern there. I really, really think that they got a nice little player in the defensive back from Wake Forest.
I do too.
Round. I think he'll end up being a good player.
Yeah.
And Beebe's going to be a good center. Beebe's a good football player. He's going to end up. They're going to look back on that pick and say, you know what, we got ourselves a long-term starting center in third round and really solidify their offensive line. So I like that. I like their draft. I thought they had a good draft. I just don't. I worry about Nealon. He plays hard.
Yeah.
He's physical. He's tough. But where does he play? He's kind of a tweener, and so I don't know where you play him.
Pete, man, love you, man. Appreciate your time as always,
By the
man.
way, Monty Smith will be a player. I was on him. I loved him coming out. I still think he's going to be a player. They need to get some weight on him. He got too thin. Once he gets some weight on him, he's going to be a good football player.
Man, I hope you're right about that, Pete. Thanks, brother. Love you. Take care, man.
All right, take care, guys.